Welcome to Live Like an Acrobat. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, two-time World Acrobatic Gymnastics Champion, USA Gymnastics Hall of Fame member, and circ artist. I'm also an advocate for rain. On each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I discuss acro handstanding in terms of training tips, coaching, and I explore circus and acrobatic gymnastics competitive life as I have lived it from past to current, and I theorize on what the future may bring in these fields. On each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I will bring you insight through my own experiences, which are rooted in a perspective built on social justice advocacy and how these important issues continue to intersect between the circus arts and acrobatics competitive world at large. On each episode, I have the pleasure of discussing these various narratives with a variety of fascinating special guests. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. Please consider a donation to encourage the continuation and evolution of this podcast. The details of how to donate are located in the show notes. Please make sure to check out the circuspreneur.blog.com for extended conversations and interactive content of each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. I am available for handstand private sessions and workshops through aerialfitbodies.com, and in a new announcement, I'm also a Circo certified trainer. Check out circo.co, a new circus school online international platform where you can learn hand balancing with me and learn so many other circus disciplines from trained circ performers from all over the world. Check out my new vlog series, Think Like an Acrobat, which is available exclusively on Circus Talk as a pro series. It's offering pro tips to professionals within the circus arts industry. On the second episode of Think Like an Acrobat, out now on Circus Talk, I interview Cirque du Soleil clown and creative director of Beyond Recreation, Michael J. Garner, about how you can learn to resource for yourself by mastering virtual event planning. For those of you seeking a virtual burlesque experience, I will be participating in the upcoming Marvelous and Melanated, which presents LA's Black Burlesque and Variety Artists Review. Follow at Marvelous and Melanated for show dates, cast, and ticket link. All details will be available in the show notes. On this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, I have the absolute pleasure of interviewing the oh-so-fierce, exotic aerialist, Miss Candace Cane. Candace Cane is a world-famous pole performer, dance instructor, burlesque artist, and all-around entertainer. Since moving to Los Angeles from Washington State in the 90s, she has trained with some of the most notable dance teachers and acting coaches, studying dance, voice, and musical theater throughout her school career. With over 7 years of pole experience and 20-plus years of dance history, she has quite the resume ranging from theatrical, commercial, live shows, and more. Candace's passion for pole dancing and shaking her tail feather has landed her several gigs where she displayed her talents in live concerts for Snoop Dogg and Ashanti, movies such as Dolemite Is My Name, the Grammys, and music videos for artists like Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, Maroon 5, Eazy, Ed Sheeran, and many others. More so than performing, Candace enjoys teaching dance and helping students achieve goals through thorough instruction and demonstration. She started teaching pole dancing classes in 2013 and has since taught workshops and private lessons in several studios across the United States and Mexico. When she isn't on the road, you can find Candace teaching private lessons at her in-home studio or at several pole studios in Los Angeles. Aside from using them to dance, Candace rents out poles and is an authorized ex-pole dealer. Please welcome the exotic aerialist to the show, Miss Candace Cane. Let my conversation with sweet Miss Candace Cane uplift you from now and forever. If you need inspiration moving forward to get you through the end of this year, which has been epic on all of us, and to put some pep in your step through 2021 and get you ready for the new journeys and blessings and openings that are going to happen for you, then this is the conversation for you. I'm so grateful to have performed with Candace in Marvelous and Melanated. Please tune into that and enjoy my conversation with Candace. She has so much to share, so much to teach, and you have so much to learn from her. And her exuberance and her joy for life and her perspectives are contagious. That is the word for Candace in the best way. She is like soup for the soul. And I am so grateful to have her on the show and to have a meeting of minds with Candace. And I hope that you are illuminated from our talk together. And to open up this interview with Candace, I wanted to share a little bit of background of protest that I walked into right before my conversation with Candace. It was a spontaneous BLM protest and human rights protest, Black Lives Matter protest. And it was something. We are in pockets of that right now. And Candace and I speak about that in this interview and about how our careers and our lives have been affected and touched by it. And Candace has such a just great way of speaking about things that are difficult to speak about. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have from her. So if you hear that chorus coming on at the moment, it is the peaceful gathering and protest, which was small and socially distanced, that I happened to run into. And like I know there are no coincidences, there are only synchronicities in life. And I felt like I had to share that as the lead up to this episode with Candace, because it brought me another breath of feeling that we need to continue to speak about all issues in this world that affect the lives of all beings in so many multidimensional ways that we will reflect on together in this episode with the Miss Sweet Candace Cane. So please enjoy and welcome to the show, my fabulous guest, Miss Candace Cane.
Keep this solidarity. The solidarity with people who want what you want. They want a better way of life for themselves and their families. Come on. Join me in solidarity. All right.
Hi, Candace. Welcome to the show, beautiful. How are you today?
I am doing absolutely fabulous, love. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming on. You literally just got back into the country, so I appreciate you coming on to chat about all of your fabulousness and our upcoming show together. How was your trip, and what did you travel for? Do you care to share?
My trip was fantastic. It was actually a leisure trip of family and friends, and it was my first time getting a group of my good girlfriends, like my best friends together. One of them brought their boyfriend. I was there with my husband. My mom was there, and we stayed at this place called the Villa Milagro in Troncones, Mexico, which is, you would fly into Ixtapas, Zihuatanejo. I'm not sure if you know the movie Shawshank Redemption, but at the end, you know, he's talking about this beautiful place, Ziwa, and that's actually where we were. So we did some hiking and kayaking and looking at the caves and did some snorkeling, hung out on a boat. I mean, I had a blast. I'm so happy. It was just nice to have some sort of normalcy, being that we've all been, locked inside for the last 8, 10, however many months it's been.
I know. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for you. I'm glad that you got rejuvenated. You're able to spend some time with your family. You got out. That's like what's going to keep us all sane during these times. I know
Very
it's
true.
Like stretching on and on and on. And I've even, taken a little breather here and there, and it is definitely restorative and helping me to come back to life and be inspired and dip back into my creative efforts with more ease and feeling good about everything and having some more balance, which is, I just feel like it's everything to continue to stay sane. So I wanted to also start by saying that we have the pleasure of performing together in the upcoming Burlesque showcase, Marvelous and Melanated, produced by the fierce Jezebel Thunder and hosted by Sheila Starr. I'm so excited.
Girl, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Honestly, it's so lovely to be able to be a part of a cast where, everyone kind of looks like me. Sometimes I end up in a cast and I'm the odd man out, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, there is a sort of unity in this troupe that I love. And a lot of us actually have known each other from before. This is actually my first time ever hearing of you. And I was so shocked. I was like, how did I not know about this fantastic, fabulous woman? I went through your Instagram. I was like, this chick is the shiznit. You are fantastic and fabulous, honey. And I'm so very grateful to be able to share a stage with you.
Thank you so much, Candace. And likewise, I am so grateful to meet you and to see you in all of your amazingness. And I love Jess, and I worked with Jess before, and I'm so grateful that she created this and she brought all of us Black burlesque and boylesque performers together. It's a first for me with an entire all-Black cast of anything, whether it's burlesque, circus, variety, and I love it. And it's all virtual, and Jess took such good care of everyone to be able to shoot it safely during these times and make it classy and sexy and high end.
Definitely. I was very, very thrilled with the way that she handled it, especially given the current situations and whatnot. I felt completely comfortable, and that made it easier for me to perform feeling confident, knowing that I'm in a safe space. And not only am I in a safe space, but I'm able to create and showcase my art and my talents with people who may not have ever heard of me or may not have known that there are such things as colored, Black, melanated, burlesque beauties, So this is such a fantastic, I'm going to keep using that word, that's my word of the day, fantastic crew of folks who come together for this show. And like, I honestly, I'm like, is it Friday yet? Because I really want to watch it.
I know, right? Soon enough. We're nearly there. And I actually just released an entire vlog episode about virtual eventing to show how to produce a show in a way that's as high-end as possible. It's from my new series, Think Like an Acrobat. And Jess Thunder totally pulled this virtual event off beautifully with Marvelous and Melanated. The event is accessible through Eventbrite and premieres this Friday for listeners who need some sassy entertainment while staying inside. And you don't want to miss Miss Candace Cane.
That's me, baby. Better known as Sweet Miss Candace.
Candace, you are a jack of all trades and really perform on everything. And I wanted to interview you for the podcast because we're the variety artists / circus artists in the burlesque show, but I think you're just doing burlesque and Marvelous and Melanated, right? You're not pole dancing or doing aerial this time.
No pole dancing, no aerial. There is a slight hand balance here or there, but that's mostly it. I try to, when I'm invited to certain gigs, I try to cater to that ideal theme. So with this mostly being burlesque, I wanted to showcase more of my burlesque work. However, I mean, me being me, I'm not going to not show off other things that I can do. So of course I'm going to throw a handstand or something flexible in my performance piece.
It's going to be full of surprises, everyone. And Candace is bringing many surprises. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what those are going to be. And you spoke on this, but I wanted to ask again, like, how does it feel with Black performers banding together even more now and putting out shows that reflect us and are about us? I personally love it, especially in burlesque. I've been doing circus burlesque for years, and I've even done it on purpose as a Black artist to take an extra stand that we are in this artistic medium too. And I also wanted to say that I thought it was pretty synchronistic that our show Marvelous and Melanated is premiering December 18th when the film Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is premiering too.
Wonderful. I was unaware of that, but my take on it, it's just nice to have visibility because so many people are not necessarily brainwashed, but they're idealistic of burlesque beauties and all of that. They'll think of more paler skin, blonde, black-haired bombshells. And obviously I have nothing against those beautiful women. However, I would just like to change the perspective of folks and let them know that when you think of burlesque, you shouldn't just think of one type of person. I mean, there's boylesque, there's, you got Asian burlesque performers, Black burlesque performers, Russian burlesque performers. Honestly, from every walk of life, you've got people who are willing to put on a show and classily strip down into their fantastic pasties and costumes underneath and showcase all these other different forms of art, whether it be twirling fans or, twirling around their robes, whatever it may be. I'm just honestly very thankful because I haven't been a part of too many things that have specifically been for melanated folks, as you had shared earlier. Everything has been pretty mixed up, and I'm okay with that. However, this whole idea of us banding together and showcasing just all of the marvelousness that we have, I mean, amongst us all, the talent and like the awards and all of the recognition that the folks of our cast have, like it's unparalleled. I freaking am so excited, girl. Like I can't even speak anymore. I'm just so excited.
Yes, it's a fantastic cast. It's a fabulous cast. And I wanted to spiral back around for those who don't know who Ma Rainey is, the movie that I mentioned. She was a very fiery, Black, fearless, bisexual blues singer from the 1920s who's known as the mother of blues. So we've got some really powerful energy in the atmosphere for our show premiering on Friday. And so you should add both of those things to your to-do list if you're tuning into this podcast and you want to see a lot of Black, sensual, sexual, fiery Black women, men, boylesque, burlesque performers from a variety of different backgrounds and genres, because coming together, for burlesque, we all have these different backgrounds and we all have these different attributes and skills that we bring to even enhance the burlesque experience. And I love that. And I love, the reason also too, with like Ma Rainey, that whole like vibe and everything, it was like, burlesque always reminds me of that time and that time period. And there was Black fierceness back then and women in those environments who were Black and who were beautiful and who were bold and who were leaders in and around that burlesque movement and seeing the blues and being artistic and being sexually free. None of this is new. These are things that people were already doing years ago, and we're carrying and pushing that forward. So I wanted to also say that our burlesque showcase, Marvelous and Melanated, just got some fabulous love from the one and only Miss Dita Von Teese, who gave our show a shout out on Instagram the other day. And for those unfamiliar with Dita, she is the modern burlesque queen, and she's like she's the who's who's of burlesque now. And I worked with Dita several years ago in Sochi, Russia, and we performed at a billionaire's birthday party together. I was there for Cirque du Soleil, and Dita was there for Dita. Naturally, she's her own entity, much like you, Miss Candace. Have you ever worked with Dita Von Teese before, Candace?
I have not, but I would love the opportunity to. Honestly, I think that she is what you would call like the epitome of burlesque. Obviously, she is well decorated as an entertainer in the burlesque world, and a lot of us do look up to her. Just the confidence and the sassiness and like that yearning that you get when you're watching her. Those are the type of things that I hope that I'm emulating, in other folks when I'm performing, that they feel that about what I'm performing and that I can make them feel how I feel about Dita.
Yes, yes, I love Dita. And for those who, I want to review just a little bit if you don't know who Dita Von Teese is. She was at one time married to Marilyn Manson. If that triggers your memory, just because I want you to go and look for Dita. And maybe that will jar your memory. But yes, I only had the pleasure of working with her once. And she's fabulous, and she sings, and she's in all sorts of things. And what I loved about Dita is that she is really an entity, much like you, Candace. And speaking of entities, you are a savage, Candace. You have an epic following. You've worked for so many industry favorites in the music business, and you rep tons of brands too with your skills. Can you share some highlights of your career and how you've evolved into the entity that you are today as Miss Candace Cane?
Well, goodness. There's so many things I can say. I have always been artistically inclined. Ever since I was a child, I was very much into the arts, dancing, singing, acting, screenwriting. So naturally, as I grew and I developed and became a little bit more bodacious and woman-like, I wanted to utilize my looks in my performance, and burlesque is a great way of doing that. But aside from burlesque, because I've only been performing burlesque for the last maybe 6-7 years, pole dancing around the same time. But I'm classically trained. I've been doing jazz and ballet and modern hip hop dancing ever since I was a child. I was a singer, alto, second soprano was my thing. And acting, I love to act. And with that, I've been able to be on screen with a couple of famous actors like Wesley Snipes and Eddie Murphy. I was featured as a dancer in the movie Dolemite Is My Name that was airing on Netflix. I believe that was 2 years ago, 2018, I believe is when it came out. So that was probably one of my biggest movies that I was featured in. I've also done a feature for Ripley's Believe It or Not, which is a fantastic thing because I would have never thought I would have worked for Ripley's. However, a good friend of mine was able to hook me up with the job. So pretty much if you go to Ripley's in Florida, they have an installment where it's a contortion box, and there's a large one and a small one. And the video that plays at that installment is me showing you how you can fit in the contortion box a few different ways. And it's really silly and really fun. And I feel like that really captured my character. I'm not a very serious performer. I'm funky and frilly and fun and just wild. And I like to not necessarily put myself in a box as a performer. I don't want to be like only that bombshell who's just the classy, sassy, beautiful, whatever. Like I am funny. I want to be comedic. I want to be serious sometimes. I want to just emulate the sexiness that's in me, that raw sensuality. And through pole dancing, I was able to do a lot of that. There have been several competitions I've competed in. I've won nationally as a doubles with my husband. Both my husband and I pole dance. We met pole dancing. That's a whole other story, but we are the champions for U.S. Pole Dance Championship. As the doubles, I've won regionally in the Pacific Championship for pole dancing. I've actually ended up on Jerry Springer pole dancing once because they wanted pole dancers for the intermission. I was like, sure, I'll come do that. Aside from that, I've done plenty of music videos. I mean, literally working with people like Rihanna, Beyonce, Ed Sheeran, Maroon 5. I've done music videos for Rick Springfield, for popular K-pop artists even. And who else? I mean, gosh, I would have to look at the list. There's so many folks that I've worked with. However, I think one of my favorites would have to be Dolemite, only because I got to have so much time with Wesley Snipes and Craig Robinson and just speaking with them and learning from them. And then I also got to talk to Craig Brewer, who is the director of that movie, and learn from him as well. And anytime you're in a position where you have people around you who are more knowledgeable or more experienced, you should do what you can to soak it up. And I am that person. I will be a sponge, honey. Like, tell me what you got to say, because I am listening. So I feel like my openness to learn has allowed me the opportunity to be in so many different places, because even though I may not be the most skilled in a certain level of expertise or whatnot, I'm able to open myself up to learn and be able to practice and overcome all of the negativity that you might feel when you're like, oh, well, I'm not that good, or I'm not good as that girl. I'm good enough to get booked, and that's what matters. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm just excited that I have done so much already, only in the last 8 years. I mean, well, actually, let me take that back. Last 20 years, because I was my first music video, I believe, was with Mariah Carey when I was 8. And that was for Oh Holy Night. I was dancing in the pews of the church, clapping and singing along. It was great. But as a entertainer, like I said, I've been able to really open myself up to a whole bunch of different opportunities and present myself in so many different ways. I never want to put myself in a box. I want to do it all. That's why I act. That's why I sing and I dance and I practice pole and I practice handstands and I practice contortion and lyra and trapeze and hammock. I won't mess with silks because F silks, but everything else is fine.
And you don't have to.
Nothing against them. It's just not for me, I like to have my nails long, and you can't have long nails for silks. Plus, I like objects that I can wrap my body around rather wrapping the object around me. So solid objects are the way for me to perform.
I hear you. Candace, what was your transition like moving to LA? Because you're not originally from LA. I'm not either. I'm a transplant. I've been in LA now for it's nearing going to be like 2 decades and stuff. But I feel like I've always lived in LA, and I feel like I've always been from LA. But I obviously moved here as a home base for entertainment, for what we do. But can you shed some light on, where were you born and raised, and what was your entry? How did you get your base skills that allowed you to evolve into so many different mediums within circus and, aerial arts?
I was originally born in Seattle, Washington, the Pacific Northwest, where it's nice and cold and rainy, but we got good music though, Kurt Cobain and all of that, Sir Mix-a-Lot and all of that. I moved to Los Angeles, not willingly, because my mother actually moved down to LA to pursue her dreams of acting and modeling and dancing. So she started her life out here, came back to Seattle to pick me up from my grandma, and I came to LA with her. And there was several times where I was brought to set with her. I'd kind of sit in the corner and watch. And I was very interested just being on set and seeing how things were, seeing all the cameras and the lights. And, at one point, my mother was an audience coordinator for the Keenan Ivory Wayans show. So I'd be there, and in the intermissions between the takes, I would go on stage and sing for the crowd. So I was never really shy. I was always willing to share my passion with folks. And my passion at the time was singing and dancing, and it still is. So being in Hollywood for most of my life, that's just what I've been exposed to, especially with a parent who was already in the industry to some degree. However, my wanting to be a part of the circus world came about probably only within the last 10 years. I was doing more classically trained dancing through my elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. I was in a part of a couple of different dance companies. And then I had messed up my knee. I had one knee that was dislocated. After I started pole dancing, I had a torn meniscus. And that was so devastating because I was so very into pole dancing. To feel that my world of pole dancing was just going to go away because of my knee, I was crushed. But then I realized, it's not as bad as the doctor said it was. I'll be okay. So I continued to dance through it. As far as moving from Seattle to LA, I definitely consider myself Los Angelinos because I've grown up here. I was born in Seattle, but I grew up in LA. All of my schools were out here. All of my friends are out here. I have some family out in Pasadena, but most of my, people that I'm around and that I love and I care for are LA based. So it made no sense to travel anywhere else for work. I had tried living down in San Diego for a couple of months. You get in love and you get into relationships, then you're like, I'll go where you go. And then you go and you realize, this ain't for me. You stay here, honey. I'm gonna go do my thing back in LA. So I decided to just stick here because this is where most of the opportunities are for me, especially since I've been here for so long. A lot of folks know who I am, and it's a trip. I will go to the grocery store or somewhere random, and there's guaranteed someone to notice me and say hi. And it's someone either that I've worked on set with, or someone that I've, go-go danced with, or someone I went to school with, or someone just I've seen in passing. But apparently I have one of those faces that you don't forget. So I'm definitely a LA baby. And I'm very much, how would I say? I'm very much a person who sticks with what they know. I'm in the arts and I'm going to stick with the arts. I don't feel like I'm going to run off and be like, you know what? F this arts thing. I'm going to become a pilot. That's not in my future per se.
I'm like, well, you know what? You might end up, doing pole in the skies. I don't know. It might end up there in some capacity. You never know how it could end up mixing in our business. But I'm the same way. I've always been an artist. I've always known what kind of art that I wanted to do, and I've always known that I was going to expand that eventually into other different forms of art. But I've always known that too, Candace. And I love meeting people and knowing other artists that are very clear about that, and that kind of like won't take no for an answer and are like, this is my genre, this is what I do. And obviously too, like we have so much access to so much more nowadays too. Being an artist means a lot. You can go into so many different fields in terms of entertainment, in terms of circus, in terms of performance, in terms of performance art, like we're saying, in terms of branding, in terms of being like an entrepreneur or a circuspreneur, which is what I like to call it. And I think it's really funny too that I also went down to San Diego because I was working there. So I lived there on and off for like 2 years. And I also thought, I think I'll make this my home base because I love San Diego. And it just didn't work, and it was never going to work. And I ended up coming back to LA too, because of course everything is here. And it was never going to work being that far away and then being, on call and being available here for commercial work and for auditions, and this just being kind of like the major hub. So I always tell anybody who has their entryway into thinking things like that, don't get ahead of yourself. Make this your home. Find what you can love about being here and settle in, because being here is the most important thing and the easiest thing when you are doing what we do, which is important. I'm also glad that you were able to live through that injury and that didn't hold you back from, doing what you wanted to do in terms of pole. And speaking of pole, I don't know if you ever did S Factor. For those who have never heard of S Factor, it's a pole intimate workout that was popular years ago before everything went super mainstream with pole, and I loved it, but I never wanted to dive more into pole professionally, but I love going to class. How do you feel about pole becoming this mainstream machine, Candace? I mean, not that long ago, it wasn't looked upon so kindly, and things like that really bother me. Like, oh, now it's okay to do this. We have permission. We can compete. How do you feel about the transformation and the evolution of pole becoming so mainstream and accessible?
I have a love-hate relationship about that. I love that people are more open to it. However, I don't like how oversaturated the market has become with performance videos, not even performance videos, but like videos of people who aren't making pole their career, just folks who are doing pole for their own fitness or for their own fun and enjoyment. It's especially when it comes to online viewing, it clutters what folks who are, how would I say, people like me who make a living from my pole dancing. I actually stopped posting most of my pole work online. For me, I feel unless you're paying to see it or unless you're paying to learn what I'm showing you, I don't want to post it for free. And you have plenty of people who are taking classes and they're very excited and I'm so happy for them. However, they just showcase every little thing that they learn. And I'm like, you got to save something for the mystery or something for live performance. But then again, that's the only time they get to be on a stage per se is through online. So I am very happy that pole has become mainstream. I was able to do a Beats by Dre commercial where I was pole dancing. Although I'm pretty sure they cut me out of the final, but it's still cool that I got hired to do such a thing. I was able to do a gig pole dancing at SeaWorld for their opening. They had a new circus act show and I guess they had Chinese pole in the show, but they allowed me to come do my regular standard pole dancing. So it's great. However, I just wish there was a way to make it so it wasn't so saturated with folks who aren't necessarily making it their livelihood and their business.
Right, exactly. And how funny. We have so much in common, Candace. I also worked and performed at SeaWorld. That's why I was living in San Diego too.
Wow, my gosh.
Yeah, and there was Chinese pole there. I can attest to that. And I love how you were the one that ended up doing the pole there. That is, I love that. And I totally agree with you in terms of, the circus performing arts. It's really become that thing. And, I spoke about that in terms of how much LA changed over the last about 10 to 15 years. And, when all the rates and all those things started to go down because a lot of hobbyists started doing a lot of jobs on the weekend. And they started taking a lot of the professional jobs away from everybody. And then they had their regular careers that they were able to sustain during the week. So they weren't dependent on those jobs in the clubs. And so then all the rates started going down. So people like me that were making a living out of this started to really suffer. And I don't really feel like it's ever really bounced back. And, again, bless everyone. I love people that have gotten into this for so many different reasons, but there does have to be a balance because you do have to be able to make a living from it if that's the only thing that you're going to be able to do. And also too, in recognizing how that has aggravated the markets for all of us is very important. And I think it's something to consistently speak about because then people get into it and then they're very kind of confused. They're like, how do people make a living out of this? Or they think that somebody's making a living out of it, but what they don't realize is that they're not, and they're posting a lot and they seem to be working all the time, but what they're doing is taking some things here and there and they're doing it for not as much, and then they're able to sustain without doing that because they have they're a lawyer, or they have they're in tech or something like that. And so I think there's always been this very fine line for me with pole is always been that in terms of it being kind of like appropriated is people saying that it's kind of like this inappropriate thing, and then now all of a sudden it's no longer inappropriate. So for me, I always have thought that was very funny in terms of now you can do it at church in front of kids, and before people were kind of saying that this wasn't okay. And I think it's always really interesting where that shifts and changes and who that shifts and changes for and by and how and why. So I always am looking at that because there's always something new that comes onto the scene. And for me with pole, I mean, it's, pretty ferocious in terms of, the visceral reaction people would get to anybody doing pole dancing. And so
right.
For me, I look at that in terms of, well, hey, wait a second here. It's in recognizing where did this come from? Who started it really? And are those that started it actually still benefiting from it now in terms of what it has become? So
right.
I think that's
I have to cut you off real quick. I wanted to speak. There was a hashtag that was going around a while ago, and it was hashtag not a stripper. Oh my goodness gracious, girl, that took me out. I was like, are you guys serious? Like, it's okay for you to pole dance. You don't have to completely disassociate yourself from the origins in which you're pulling your stuff from.
Right.
Honestly. And I'm like, all right, so you're hashtagging not a stripper, but you're wearing a thong, 8-inch heels, and you're dancing around a pole. Yes, it might be in a pole studio. However, girl, check yourself. Like, come on now. Oh, the audacity. I just can't with people, Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. The audacity. That is the perfect word, I think, too. Like, wait a second. You wouldn't be here if not for that. And what's the only difference? Now, because we're in a competitive setting? No, it's, wait a second. That's not cool. And that's not okay for me. And, I'm as traditionalist as they come in terms of, how all these kind of mediums come to be or whatever, in terms of how anybody thinks that I look or see circus or how I see performing arts, because people usually have some kind of like stifled version of how I see things because of my background. I'm not really sure why. But that for me is, I think, that's that. I always want to speak about that in terms of pole, because I think it's just something so important to continue to speak about. And and maintain that visibility in and around that too, of like we're saying, in terms of appropriating, or in terms of who now says that things are okay. Because I think it's always really interesting when there's people that are kind of like gatekeepers, and I don't like that because I'm such a rebel, and I don't like anybody assuming that they get to gatekeep around me or decide now something is available, now something is okay,
right.
now something
is permissible at this point because I said so.
Exactly. And I mean, we're all artists. So remind everybody about that too. I'm like, wait a second. This was like by free, open people that started this. It's going to stay with the free, open people now. Like, it's not going to become this, hampered thing where it becomes put into a box. Like what you're talking about. You don't like to be put in a box for artists. And this is an art form. So I think it's taking on, quite of a mind of its own. Do you think that you will vie, Candace, to go to the Olympics, even on your own once pole becomes an Olympic sport, or with your husband that you compete with, who is Ukrainian, right? I love that.
It is. And I really am not interested in doing any more competitions unless it's like a one-off thing and there's a large cash prize, because I don't got the time. Training, I don't train as much as I used to. I can do pretty much everything I was able to before. However, I just don't practice it as much. I'm more so focused now on teaching rather than performing, rather than competing. Everything that I do for performance, I'm comfortable with, I'm solid with. I'm not willing to risk my life or my limbs trying all these crazy new tricks that at my age, if I fall, I'm not going to bounce back as quick. So I rather just stick with what I know because I'm still getting paid regardless. And most of the time, unless you are someone in the industry of aerial arts or pole, you can do the hardest thing and they won't even care. So I've been there. I've been on stage and I'll do like a bungee combination and all that stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, that was cool. But if I just do a simple drop split, whoa, the crowd goes wild. And I'm like, seriously, y'all, you don't even understand that I was doing all this hard stuff for you and you did not appreciate it. So it's all about presentation. And I feel like also with presentation, it's going into physical looks of presentation. I perform as a pole dancer. Sometimes I do perform as a stripper. However, there are so many lines and boundaries that are within that can be crossed and misconstrued and mixed up. So there's certain gigs that I'm performing as a pole dancer and I'm getting paid to be there to perform, and I'm not getting tipped because that's just the nature of that type of work. And then there's other events where I'll perform. I'll get like maybe a small showing up rate to be there, but the people there are tipping a bunch. So it's comparable. And then you've got events where, sometimes like as a stripper, you have to pay to work, a house fee sometimes. And then you may not even make any money, but you still got to perform. So it's just, I think people get a little confused with the idea of like sex work and pole work, because like some people are like, well, I'm a pole dancer, I'm not a stripper, but I'm still getting paid to do these jobs. And I'm like, that's still kind of sex work, girl. Like you're twirling around a pole. That's where it comes from. Like, I don't care if you're trying to, disassociate yourself from it, but that's the reality of what other people are thinking,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting. Thank you for, explaining that differentiation also too, and how you, kind of like live within those mediums and how you project yourself differently into those spaces, because I think that's very important to hear for pole dancers and everybody trying to find the balance, trying to find, like where they fit in, and trying to find like the language and the verbiage to describe how they fit in different situations and what you should be doing in certain situations, and how you kind of take care of yourself too as a businesswoman in those spaces, and how you make those things advantageous for you, because that's interesting. And I think that's really important to understand that, because
yes, very true. And I will say that like, for me, my favorite type of performance when it comes to showcasing my pole work, I've been blessed to be able to perform as a quote unquote go-go dancer who poles at several different locations. So in Los Angeles, specifically West Hollywood, there was this place called Flaming Saddles, and it was the most amazing, fun bar I had ever had the opportunity of working for. Just the environment there was just so uplifting, and everyone was so great and just enjoying their time there and enjoying us as performers. We were go-go dancing as cowboys and cowgirls, because that was the theme. aka, Flaming Saddles, duh. However, it was a gay bar, aka Flaming Saddles, and being there really did something for my spirit because I was able to showcase my art in a way where it was appreciated by everyone who walked in the door. Some people were just like, oh my God, you're the best stripper I ever seen. And I don't take that as a diss. Like, I'm like, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Although at that time I wasn't necessarily stripping off my clothes. I was pole dancing, but I understand what they mean. And then other people are like, you are the most amazing performer, artist that I've seen. So it's just, the interpretations of everyone is going to be different. Even if you want to tell the folks and yell at the top of the mountain, this is what I am, people are going to have their own views of you. But regardless of the situation, I was just very thankful to be able to be in a place like Flaming Saddles where I was able to pole dance and dance on the floor and sometimes act like a stripper and act like a break dancer and. Like, it was just endless there. So that to me was like the epitome of performing, to be able to combine all the different works that I'm a part of. They even had like ropes that we were able to swing off of, and I was trying to do some type of hammock tricks with them and drops and climbs. And girl, if they were still open, I would say you need to come hang out with us over there because you'd have a fun time there too.
Yes, I know the Flaming Saddles, and I love it there. I never performed there, but I would have loved to perform with you, Candace, there. If they were still open. And we'll see, maybe something will come back in the next couple of years that'll be just as good and just as exciting. And we'll be able to combine efforts there in some way because, yeah, you're just fabulous. And I wanted to cycle back around a little bit to your husband, who's Ukrainian, because most of my partners have been from Eastern Europe, so I've got a soft spot. And I wanted to ask you, how's your Russian and how's your Ukrainian, Candace?
Oh my goodness. So the first year we started to date, actually I can't even say the first year because we got married that first year that we met. So we met at Flaming Saddles. He was a go-go dancer there and he was unable to work one night. So a girlfriend of mine reached out and said, hey, there's this bar in West Hollywood. They need a pole dancer. Are you available? I was like, sure, I'll show up. I come, I do my dance, and I guess after whatever gig he was at, he came by and saw me and was like, oh. And he walked over after my set. He's just like, hello. I was like, hi. And he was very, very thick accented, and he was like, I'll train you for free. I was like, oh, all right. I get to learn crazy Russian, Ukrainian pole tricks for free. I'm down. But it ain't a date though. Because I was very adamant. I was 6 months single, trying to enjoy my single life because I had just been from relationship to relationship. And so we had met for our first training session, and I brought my little brother with me because I was very serious that this was not a date. So my brother sat in the corner on his tablet watching Lord knows what cartoons or YouTube, and we trained. And, I couldn't ignore the fact that he was handsome. He had a body of a god. That man was gorgeous. However, I was just so caught up in the idea of trying to be single. But 5 weeks later, he proposed to me. I said yes. A couple months later, we got married. And that first year, I was like, all right, I guess I should learn Russian. I told him I'd rather learn Russian than Ukrainian, being that a lot of my other friends that are from that region are Russian speakers, not necessarily Ukrainian speakers. So I had downloaded, I think it was like Babbel or something, was on it for about 3 months. And then I stopped. My pronunciation is pretty good, at least from what I've been told when it comes to Russian. When I visited his family in Ukraine, I've been out there twice now, twice or three times. And they're always impressed with my ability to at least try to communicate with them instead of just, using Google Translate the whole time. I'll try to figure out what I need to say. And I think that they're happy about that. But as far as like my vocabulary right now, not as good as it was 2 years ago. I could like, Привет, как дела? Хорошо, как tu тебя? That would be Russian, or if Ukrainian would be, Добрый день, меня звати Candace Cane, and that's like, hello, good day, my name is Candace Cane. That's me. So, I definitely could learn a little bit more or a lot of bit more, but being that we're in LA and we're in a place where most people speak English, I'm just down with learning my, keep continuing with my English, expanding my vocabulary, because every day there's a new word that I'm like, that is really a word? Words with Friends will teach you something, girl.
Well, I love that you speak Russian. I love that you speak Ukrainian. Russian is my favorite language. I've been speaking it since I was a little kid, and I was raised by Russians and by Ukrainians and by Bulgarians, and obviously working around them all the time. And like I said, like you, dating and or marrying them all the time too, because they are near and dear to me. So that is like family, and I've been to Russia so many times, and Ukraine, and so yeah, that part of the world. Those are my people. And
I would say though, the first time I went to Ukraine, I had never been stared at as much as I was when I was there. And I'm talking about, like, I performed at concerts, whole bunch of people looking at me, but I walk down the street in Ukraine and heads are turning, breaking their necks, like, who is this dark-skinned person hanging on to this Ukrainian guy? I'm like, that's my husband. Yep, that's me. My name is Candace, baby.
Yes. Меня зовут Candace, okay?
Yes.
Like, we are here. We are lovely. I know. I try to always like remember like what that was like when I started going to like Russia and Ukraine from when I was really, really little, and trying to like translate that to people and like how that feels. But yeah, it's such a beautiful feeling, and I've always had, really incredible, beautiful experiences because, like I said, it's family. I'm always there usually with people that I know and people that I've known since I was really young, or like friends, obviously now from circus and going in and out of there. But for sure, sweetheart, heads were turning. They love you.
And it wasn't even a negative thing. I don't want people to get the idea like, they don't like Black people over there. That's not the thing. It was just in his town, because he was born in Chernivtsi, and there aren't too many of anybody outside of Ukrainians there, unless they're students coming to the college or the university. Other than that, it's so very just Ukrainian. And it's a shock for me coming from LA, where we are a hodgepodge of different cultures. It's such a weird thing to just see one type of person.
I know. It's crazy. Yeah. When I started going there when I was little, they were like, they want to touch you because they've only seen a Black person in movies, and there's no Black people in their village or in this part of the country, because that's what I had when I was little. And, growing up with that too, it changes like your entire experience with any culture, that you go into that is not, mixed. And I'm very grateful, again, that I grew up in California, that, like you did, and with so many mixtures of people, and had so much access to that too, because for me it was just like no big deal. And then obviously being around people that were so like like my family and everything, and allowing us to understand like this is such a big deal, because they don't have the same kind of diversity here. It's a completely different culture in that way. And yeah, and coming into that, so yeah, that's a special moment. And going back every single year and going back at different times in my life, obviously too, I can relate to it differently, at different times in my life, and, being at different ages and having different levels of awareness and all that too. So it's it's all good. I can't believe you guys got married within like that first year. That's just so perfect.
Girl, we met January 2017, we met. August 2017, we married, and we had a beautiful wedding in Malibu overlooking the ocean. It was fantastic. I twerked so hard to pay for that wedding, girl. Tell you. And I said it. I made sure when I did my little, dinner speech or whatnot, I said, I hope you guys know how hard I had to twerk for you guys to have this fancy ass meal for your dinner.
Oh my God. They must love you.
I mean, and of course, because we met pole dancing, we had a pole at the reception and everyone got on it. I'm like my dad, my mom, my brother, my friends. We have obviously a few circus friends who are doing more elaborate tricks. I had some of my pole students that I love that were there, and it was great. It was so fun. Honestly, aerialists, we're just so fun. I can't imagine a group of people who can out-enjoy life like aerialists,
Yeah, I know. Our performing arts group, like, we take everything to the next level. I mean, it can never be boring. I mean, you had a pole at the wedding. I mean, how can that not be fun and just like the first experience for anybody? How can that not be like the funnest thing? I wanted to ask you, Candace, what inspires you in your contortion and hand balancing and aerial and pole? And how have you been keeping up your skills during this time? And how have you been coaching during this time too? And what can those that are interested in your teachings expect from you? And what is your system of coaching? And what's your whole perspective on that? Since you are like a quadruple threat here.
Wow, that's a lot of questions. I will start by the first one. So my thing was, I wanted to see how far my body could go. I am very interested in the human anatomy and muscles and how, certain people are tighter because of certain jobs they may have, like people who sit at desks all the time and, students and, people who, let's say, are bus drivers, anyone who has a sitting job where they're not necessarily up and walking around the office per se. I didn't want to be stationary and sedentary. So I've always been a mover, and in moving and dance, in my eyes, not saying this is true with everyone, but in my eyes, the more flexible you are, the better performance you can, perform. And I mean, I know there's amazing people out there who don't do any splits or don't do any big tricks, but are amazing performers. However, for my personal view, I prefer seeing people who are very strong and very flexible. So I wanted to build my strength. At one point, I was actually training for a bikini fitness competition, ended up getting canceled, but I was still left with the amazing body that I had built up. So I was super strong, and I started training my flexibility. So I had to kind of let go of a little bit of that muscle because it was too tight for me to stretch. And so with my stretching, I had realized that it's a process and you have to trust it. And what I say to my students all the time is celebrate the subtle victories. It may not be a big difference from the first class to the second class, even to the fifth class, but each time you work towards it, whatever it may be, whatever class subject you're learning, you are firing off those muscles that it takes to do whatever trick that you're working on. So eventually it does get done. So just understand that, let's say my pole students, some of them, they can barely even pull themselves off the ground in the first class or the second class. But then, by the third or fourth, they're able to pull themselves off for like a second or 2 seconds. And I'm like, that is so worthy of celebration because your body is working with you, not against you. So it's more so about your mind and allowing your body to go with it. Some people, they count themselves out from the jump, and it's so frustrating as a teacher to hear my students say like, oh, I can't, or I'm too fat for this, or like, I'm not strong enough for this, or I haven't been practicing enough. I'm like, well, there's several things you could do to fix those things if you wanted. You could practice more. If you want to work out more, you can. If you want to just practice more and build the strength, you can. Like it's not like you're never going to be able to do these things. It's just how much work you're willing to put into it. With my students, I was teaching for the last, I started teaching in 2013. And I had taught in several different studios all through Los Angeles. I've traveled and done workshops in different places in the country. I've even taught down in Mexico. And regardless of where I am, I always feel at home while I'm teaching because I love giving people hope and giving people a sense of validation that they are able to do more than they thought. Like I like pulling into a person and like pulling out of them what they thought was hidden. I'm going to let you know that you are that boss, you are that king or queen, and that you are capable so long as you put your mind to it and you have the effort to back it up. I'm here to help you along the way. I'm not against you. If I'm making you do extra exercises, it's only for your own good. Don't hate me. It will be fine. I do so very much miss teaching in person, but being in Los Angeles, most of the studios are still closed. And just for safety reasons, I've decided just to keep everything online. I've been teaching online via Zoom or Skype for the last 2 years, even before the pandemic hit, just because there were several students via Instagram or Facebook who found me and were like, I want to train with you, but I'm not in your city. I'm like, well, luckily we have a thing called the internet and video cameras, so I can help you. And I'm always aware of what my students can and can't do in their level. I don't like to push people too far because there's a safety factor. You have to build it up. I get students who on the first class of pole, they want to try to go upside down. I'm like, you got to learn how to climb first. You got maybe some fins. Let's get, work your way up, baby step it. I would suggest for anyone who is wanting to try a new area of expertise in aerial or circus arts, just show up, do the work. If you want to do it, do it. There are so many people who are teaching and so many really good teachers out there. Do your research. Unfortunately, on the other hand, there are a lot of people who are great performers, but are not as good teachers. And that's what I really hope that students can differentiate. Like, just because someone could perform really good doesn't necessarily mean they have the vocabulary or the ability to show you and teach you the way to do it safely. There's so many people who I've seen, they're like, okay, you just do this. I'm like, okay, well, what is this? Am I pushing? Am I pulling? Where's my weight distribution? There's so many things that you're not explaining to me. So I just hope that, for anyone who's out there wanting to go and find a new type of way to move your body and get upside down and swirl around, just do your research. By all means, hit me up. I teach flexibility classes, and you don't have to be flexible to take my class. That's one thing I hear so much. Well, I'm not flexible. I'm like, that's the whole point of taking the class, is to show up and work on your flexibility. I'm not asking you to do a chest stand with your toes touching your head right now when you could barely touch your toes folding forward. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate the process. So celebrate your subtle victories. And again, I'm available to teach flexibility classes, pole dance classes, twerking, chair dancing, floor work, exotic movement, handstand practice, headstand practice. And I think that's about it. I actually have a website. It's higherlearningdance.com. www.higherlearningdance.com, because usually I'm high off the ground, either in my aerial or maybe it's because I like to puff pass. But either way, Higher Learning Dance is where you can find me. I'm also on Instagram at Higher Learning Dance for the company. You can find me at Sweet Miss Candace for my personal page if you want to keep up to date with all the shows that I'm a part of, all the classes that I'm offering, any workshops that I may be doing, or just drop in to say hello and, show me that you care about what it is that I'm doing for you. Because I post not for myself, I post it for y'all.
Tell them, Candace. Remind them. Doing this for you. Well, in terms of body work, another great component to your teachings and to who you are, Candace, that I really love is that you also follow a plant-based diet, and you are an advocate of plant-based dieting. And it's obviously a very important component to who you are as an artist and a human being. Can you shed a little bit of light on why you follow a plant-based diet? And have you seen the documentary Invisible Vegan?
I have not seen that documentary yet. I've seen pretty much every other documentary about veganism, but not that one. I originally became plant-based because I wanted to cut up and look lean for my very first pole competition. It was purely out of aesthetic reasons why I wanted to eat plants. I was very much a chicken and shrimp and, eggs and all of that. I never really was into milk. I've been drinking almond milk and soy milk since I was a child, but, I'd eat ice cream and things like that. However, when I was training for my very first pole competition, I just wanted to look really damn good on stage. And I knew that the easiest way to cut up my abs was to just cut out all the meat and dairy from my diet. And I did, and I felt great and I looked great. And I was like, well, I guess I could just, keep doing this. And I eventually started to learn what and how my diet was impacting not only my insides and my physicality and my outsides, but the world around me and the air that we breathe and just the world as a whole, because it's not just about yourself. If you want to make it about yourself and be plant-based for yourself, that's cool. But do know that it's a butterfly effect for every meat, every piece of chicken that I'm not eating, there's so much, or every piece of beef that I'm not eating, there's so much water that had gone into that cow and to grow the crops to feed that cow and all that thing, and, taking up all this space. And I mean, I don't like to go into too much of the negatives of it. I try to keep things very positive and light. If you want to do the research on your own, there are so many documentaries like Forks Over Knives, or what was that one that Arnold Schwarzenegger was just part of? Gosh, dang it, I can't remember it. But anyways, do your research. However, I also noticed with the plant-based diet, my performance physically was a lot better. I was stronger. I was recovering from workouts a lot quicker. I wasn't lethargic after eating. I felt bursts of energy instead of feeling like I got the itis, which I was always catching the itis after a meal. That's also because I would eat way too big of a portion for my little self. And my stomach were bigger than I could handle, I guess. But I like to advocate for plant-based, not just because it obviously is good for your body, but for the planet that we live on. I would love for your children, I mean, I'm not having children, but your children and your children's children and your children's children's children to have a world worth living in that's not overtly polluted and overtly filled with all of this negative stuff that happens when you consume things of the animal, animal bodies and all of that such. I will say one last thing about the whole veganism thing. People tend to feel that vegans are preachy. And I feel like you never hear that anywhere else. When you have McDonald's commercials on TV showcasing all that burger meat, or Popeyes commercials, you don't feel like, oh, they're pushing meat onto me. How dare they? But the moment I open my mouth and, showcase my plant-based meal and say, oh, this is so great. They're like, oh, I can't believe you just pushed your vegan ways on me. I'm like, I'm just showing you a good meal. If you feel like I'm being pushy, that's on you, because I am not that type of vegan.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, if you feel guilty, maybe there's a reason, and you should probably discuss that with somebody. Or look into yourself and be like, maybe I'm just being this way because it's so innate and ingrained in me. I had a conversation with a friend recently who shared a video of a vegan fellow talking about how if you eat meat and you pay for cows and chickens to be killed, you're essentially like pro-rape, because these animals aren't asking to have babies born and then have the babies taken from them. They're artificially inseminated. And there's all these other things that happen that people want to be out of sight, out of mind of. And I'm like, the way I feel about it, if you feel so strongly that you need meat in your diet, go ahead and find a farm and do it yourself. If you can go kill your own chicken and you can go kill your own cow and all of that and deal with all the repercussions and everything that comes with it, then by all means. But it's not necessary. We don't need to eat those type of things when we have access to over 70,000 different plants, over 70,000 different grains and beans and legumes and vegetables and leaves, and just, girl, I can't with people sometimes. They're like, it's so difficult being vegan. I'm like, no, you're just making it difficult. You're making excuses, but it's okay. I'll be here for when you're ready. And I'm totally the one, like, I don't care if you've said anything negative about veganism before. I'm still willing to help people if they're interested in transitioning.
That's beautiful. Thank you for all of that. And the documentary that I did mention, The Invisible Vegan, I've been on retreat with the creator, and she's so exceptional. And it's the vegan documentary for the Black community, and literally every community needs to see this, but it's specifically focusing on veganism for the Black community and our lineage of veganism, and how it relates to the stereotypes of how we've been raised to eat within the Black community now. And I highly recommend everybody watch The Invisible Vegan. You will learn so much from this documentary. I thought that I had seen every single documentary about veganism out there until I saw this, and it's incredibly brilliant. And it goes into the entire societal constructs and things built in and up around how we eat and how we source food and how we decide what goes into our bodies. And I love what you said too, Candace, about deciding, if you can kill it and if you can do this and that, then you should have access to do it. And that actually very much echoes the late Anthony Bourdain, who, for what it's worth, I love him. He was not a staunch vegan, but he used to say that about meat. He used to say, if you can do that, then you should have, then you can have the right and the honor to be able to enjoy that meal if you're willing to go and kill it and do it for yourself. And I very much love that. I have been majority plant-based for years, but not completely, not exclusively. But
what's your thing? Is it cheese? What is it?
No, actually, I do not like cheese. I don't eat cheese really, and I eat a little bit of meat on and off. I eat a little bit of fish, very sparingly. But I've been microbiotic and vegan for like almost 2 decades now. So, but I'm not 100%. So I never say that I'm 100% in that way. And I think that it's a journey for people. I even am, with people that, there were people that were upset that, the fast food places were going to have, vegan meals. And so it's a big conversation even with the vegans. Some vegans are very upset that, fake meat is tasting like meat and, that certain, fast food places are introducing vegan things. And I think that's amazing. I think it can't be done too much. I think that everything is a milestone in the direction of health for ourselves and for the planet. And I think that, eating and food sourcing is a social justice issue. And the way that they relate that into it in Invisible Vegan is really brilliant, showing it as part of the, societal systematic racism structures that we have within America, and also too, obviously, at large, what we do to people in and around their food sources and how we treat them and what you have access to. So I am with you on that. And I think that it's an important conversation that's just going to continue to evolve. The conversation being a vegan, 20 years ago that I was around, and that, is completely different. You have completely different access now. You have brilliant food sources now. It's much more affordable than it used to be 20 years ago. It's accessible. It tastes good. It does not have to be a luxury, and you can do it for yourself, and you'll see all sorts of things because it's a psychological, physiological, physical, mental, everything happens and operates in what you put in your body. And this is nothing new. This has been known for, hundreds, thousands of years. And now people are putting it into language that people can understand easier. And I also like what you say too about feeling, like you shouldn't be shy, or you shouldn't feel like you're offending people in speaking about things that to me go so much deeper than about what you need to look cool in eating with, because it has so little to do with how cool you're going to look. It's very much life and death in terms of the assault on our food systems that we have in this country, that we have on people of color with their diets, and the longevity and the beauty of your life very much depends on who gets to decide what lands on your plate, and recognizing that there's so many things that we have been brainwashed in and around food, to eat and to do, and things that are not, actually what we need to adequately use to be healthy and to function well. And so that's a beautiful rundown by you, Candace. Thank you. I just want to ask you one more question because we're nearing the end of our interview. And I just wanted to ask, what plans do you have for the new year in 2021? You are so grounded and confident and brilliant. What's going to get you through as an artist? As a human having an artistic experience, as I like to say it, and what advice can you leave for us listeners?
2021, I plan on doing some more traveling to teach. I know I had plans for that this year. However, a certain thing that starts with a C and ends with 19 messed all of that up. So we're going to have to resume for that next year. Honestly, I feel like I just want to reach out and touch everyone. Like, I'm such a lover and I have so much love to give and so much knowledge I want to share. I'm not a selfish person. I don't want to hoard all the knowledge that I have. You're meant to share, yes, you have to pay me for it, but I'm meant to share what I have. And so I would love to get back on the road next year and hit a couple different states, maybe a couple different countries, and teach whatever it is that the students want to learn from me. As far as my own personal growth, I would love to get a space, rent a space somewhere where I can do my training. So instead of renting per se, like from a studio, I can have my own little spot where I can bring my private clients in or do private, let's say, pool parties or whatnot, or just to produce my own content, just because although dancing in the house is great, I would love more space and not like be afraid of kicking things or people crossing my camera or little brothers making noise in the background or anything of that nature. I also feel that for me in the new year, I think that I want to be more accessible. And what I mean by that, I feel like I've been kind of closed off per se. I had a lot of personal things happen in my life that had really put a damper on me. Not that you could tell right now because I'm working through it, but like I had lost my father and that really just crushed me. So I had lost my desire to dance and perform. And I used to look to my dancing as therapy. But even that just hurt too much. So I'm looking forward to getting in touch with that side of myself and just allowing myself the space to grieve and the space to dance again and just flow through my emotions with my movements as I once did. And hopefully I'll feel, invigorated again because I do love dancing, but for some reason I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. For work is one thing, but for my own sake. So I'm looking back and trying to claim it for myself again, really just do this for me, not just because it's for a job, not just because I'm getting paid, but dance because I love to dance and create because I love to create and learn because I love to learn. And then as far as you guys out there, all of my circus freaks and fantastic babes and dudes out there, I suggest you go forth and be as awesome as you want to be. Don't let anybody hold you back, not even yourself, because we are so quick to put a damper on our own progress. And we have to stop doing that. Stop stifling your growth with all of these negative thoughts. Don't even think it, because you think it, I think, therefore I am, right? Let's not think those negative thoughts. Just, I had a student I was training the other day and she was just like, oh, I'm lousy, I'm this, or I'm not, this was just a bad take. I'm like, look, just say, instead of those things, just say, I'm working on it. It's a process. I'm becoming better instead of, the negative way to say it. So just be kind to yourself, celebrate the subtle victories, love on yourself, because ultimately no one else is going to love you more than you love yourself, honey. So just immerse yourself with self-love, be grateful for the ability that you have in your body to do whatever it is that it does. And just, I guess, live in love. That's what I'm going to say. Live in love.
Thank you so much, Miss Candace Cane. I am so happy that you came onto the show. You are so amazing. Thank you for lifting us up. I am so sorry for your loss, and I send you continued healing in and around the loss of your father. And I wish you so much continued inspiration and love and joy and exuberance and happiness. And I'm so honored and excited to perform in Marvelous and Melanated with you. And until next time, please stay safe, please stay healthy, and so much love to you.
Thank you, love. I'm so happy to be able to be here with you. You are fantastic. And this won't be the last that you hear from me, girlfriend. We're going to talk a lot more.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast, where I interviewed the exotic aerialist, the oh-so-delicious Miss Candace Cane. The The Live Like an Acrobat podcast is also available on Circus Talk, the inclusive, independent, and international online network for the circus industry. Circus Talk's mission is to create a level playing field for this industry and democratize access to information. Please consider subscribing to the Live Like an Acrobat podcast and to the circuspreneur.blog.com, where you will find extended conversations and interactive content of each episode of the Live Like an Acrobat podcast. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, and until next time, please stay safe and stay healthy.